Joining us now, Roslyn Layton. We can call her Dr. Layton, we can call her Dr. Roslyn, or we can just call her Roslyn. She's with us now live at CPAC on Radio Row, where, by the way, we have a prime spot, don't we, Roslyn?
Fantastic.
It's what happens when you come here for 40 years. You get front and center. And we have a prime spot, and she is on the landing team, and she's also now a visiting scholar. So that's so impressive, right? A visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Very, very intimidating title you have, Roslyn. Visiting scholar. Not just any scholar, a visiting scholar. Now tell us what's going on with the FCC.
So tomorrow here at CPAC, you're going to have Chairman Pai of the FCC. He's going to speak along with the other Republican commissioners. But we're making America great again through communications policy. If you recall the dark years of the Obama era, that was about regulating the internet. Chairman Pai's had an incredible first year. He did over 80 substantive things to improve the ability to bring networks to Virginia. He's sped the ability to get an innovations fast-tracked. They've completed an incentive auction. And he overturned the 2015 Obama-era regulations. Now, he's also done this at a great threat to his own life and his family. He's really put his life on the line to do these things, but they had to be done. The order is published today. But I think you probably want to know, well, what is this internet regulation? What was it all about?
Net neutrality.
Right. So basically,
explain it in layman's terms.
So what this means is it's a federal bureaucracy that gets to set the price of the internet. That they would decide what is the internet, what price it should be, what kind of technology it uses, what the speed should be. It's sort of central planning. If you want to have
turn it into a utility like Ma Bell.
Right. Just what you were talking about was crumbling all over the place. Now, if you remember I remember those years of under the Ma Bell, it was overpriced. It was you had to buy your own phone through the monopoly. So they want to make a monopoly of the internet.
If you want to save money, you had to talk after midnight.
Right. It was so bad that the Department of Justice had to break up the collusion between the FCC and Ma Bell. They had to break up all those companies. Now, who in their right mind would want to put those kinds of regulations on the internet that we know and love? But that is exactly what happened in 2015.
Okay, now, Dr. Layton, those that criticize Chairman Pai's decision to get rid of net neutrality have said, look, what this is going to do now is this is going to favor the bigger internet broadband companies who then can charge a premium or deny access on faster broadband to certain companies that don't play ball with them.
So
True or false?
It's absolutely false.
Why?
Regulation helps big companies. You create regulation to enshrine monopolies.
That's so true.
Okay? So that is we've known that. Nobel Prize winners have been showing that over and over again. But the other thing is we're on the cusp of 5G. Okay? 5G is...
What is 5G?
5G is the 5th generation mobile standard. If you have a mobile phone today, you probably have 4G. 5G is 10 times faster. Now, we're going to move on to 6G. It's not the end. But
so
basically...
how do we get from 4G to 5G?
Well, we have to put up networks in communities. We have to put up small cells.
More towers?
Not more towers. Small, sort of like pizza box-shaped equipment onto poles. Okay? We're densifying networks. This is the ability to have driverless cars, to age at home, telemedicine, be able to do surgery remotely. Essentially, our next level of productivity enhancements in our country. But it's now going in sort of different speeds depending upon whether the community wants to have those kind of networks. But we are on track to roll these things out in 2015. But that kind of network that's so fast, it's like fiber to your phone. Okay, you can be able to cancel your cable subscription and get super fast speeds through the air. Okay, that's a game changer. So that sort of high-speed network that does all sorts of things, where we're talking about billions of devices, your whole home connected.
So what would stop a few companies from monopolizing that level of broadband speed, which net neutrality was essentially designed to stop?
Right. Well, net neutrality was designed to have one point of control, being the FCC, right, and to make a government monopoly. The thing is stopping it today is a lot of the innovations are very new. We are kind of in a gold rush because there's so many, we don't know exactly which business models will emerge. It's a sort of, it's a true level playing field in the sense that a lot of the new capabilities, there's a whole new set of players who want to bring forth their technologies. And the question is, do they have to ask permission of the FCC, or can they have permissionless innovation to try out their technologies?
So you think the way the FCC is headed now under Chairman Pai, basically deregulating or stopping the effort to have the government involved? Because what the Obama administration said, and what those in favor of net neutrality have said, is that actually what those regulations did was keep the net and speeds open to anybody regardless of size of company. Like, for instance, right now, if one of the bigger broadband companies don't like Netflix or they don't pay them enough, they can just clog them up, and so you're not going to be able to stream them. What stops that?
Right. So, well, just so you know,
that's
sure. That's they always want to trot that out. But listen, we already have rules on the books from the FTC to be able to address it.
I want you to debunk that argument.
Right. Well, so let me say this: the 5G, where we're speeding ahead already, we're seeing it at the Olympics in South Korea and Japan in 2020. Those countries don't have net neutrality rules, and they're already displaying virtual reality technologies. They don't have these rules, and they're moving forward. So there's no kind of law of physics that say you have to have these rules to stop these bad actors. Essentially, there is a business model. The profit incentives are actually to deliver Netflix. And so here's what I think your users should care about. Under net neutrality, you have to pay for Netflix whether or not you watch it. Okay, that means that all data is valued the same, whether or not you want it. Now that means your freedom of speech is being abridged because you have to pay to provision the network for content you don't want to see.
Right.
Under the model, under an internet freedom model, Netflix has to pay for the roads that it uses.
Right.
Okay, so this is the issue. It's Silicon Valley. They've been paying all the activists to go out there and do this. They've been paying the people in Congress to sing their song. It's all about them getting preferable price controls, so they pay zero. They put the majority of content on the internet. They don't want to pay. They don't want to pay for the roads that they use, but they want us to pay for it. So internet freedom is all about finding the right balance, allowing those companies to participate. And by the way, there's no reason we couldn't have absolutely zero price broadband. The same way that you go for Google for free, right? You have advertising. You could have the same thing on your broadband subscription. So all these companies have wanted to diversify. They wanted to do different kinds of business models, get other participants. But the net neutrality rules have made it to be end consumers have to pay the whole thing, and the FCC gets to set the price. That's not a good deal for us.
All right, good analysis. We are with Dr. Roslyn Layton. She was a member of the Trump Federal Communications Commission landing team, and she is now a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute think tank. Now, let's get to FCC control over media, conglomerate media ownership. Now, I'm a small media guy, right? I have a radio show that I've self-syndicated through various medias, and no one controls me, right? Except my audience. They don't like me, no audience, then no advertisers, right? It's all bad. So I'm only controlled by my audience. So we had these laws that said, like, one major media conglomerate cannot own a bunch of things in the same time. They can't own the newspaper, the radio station, the TV station. They simply have too much power. Now, the Trump administration said, well, we're having consolidation. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we can do that. I'm absolutely not in favor of that because I've seen it. I've seen it from the inside. Mm-hmm. You get one media company that owns everything, everybody else is screwed. That's just the way it works, especially because the media companies today of all kinds are not making enough money, especially print and radio. There's only TV and cable that are more profitable. So why would we abandon something that has worked so well?
Well,
help me get that.
Sure. So, there's actually a connection here. In the sense that this is the problem with the FCC, is that it can be used for political purposes. And is it really the place for the FCC to decide which companies can partner with which? Because at the end of the day, this is all about political control. If you,
if you take that argument, Dr. Layton, there'd be no antitrust laws.
Okay.
And then
let's let the Department of Justice do its job. Okay, the FTC, we got antitrust on the book, laws on the books. We don't need an FCC, which is a political organization, to decide whether the license gets transferred. So we have antitrust, an organization, let's use it. But let me come back to your point. You're absolutely right. We have radio, TV, print absolutely disrupted because of the internet. Now, what's wrong with small towns in America because those organizations have their revenues dried up? What's wrong with those bringing their assets together? To me, it is a thinly veiled way to attack conservative media, because it's
baloney.
Well, but that's the
what? It's got nothing to do with conservative media.
No, but what
does that have to do with conservative media? If you allow one company to go into any city or any SMSA marketing area, and they control the daily paper and the two major radio stations and the television station, they have a monopoly on editorial content.
But that's only
they also
because
have a monopoly on advertisers.
Okay. But that's
why we made diversification happen. That's why you had 3 papers in every city back in the day, because nobody could buy them up and own one.
But now we have the internet. We can start a newspaper online. The FCC also
controls
but the FCC also controls the spectrum. So we have artificially limited the supply. Okay, at the beginning of radio, you know this, there were thousands of radio stations around America. What is the first thing that the FCC did? They shut them down because they wanted to control the number of radio stations.
You go back to the history of the FCC, you're right.
Right, 1927, that's
right.
90 years ago. Okay, the technologies that we have today, we have nearly unlimited number of radio stations.
The FCC was started to
control the number of radios. The Federal Radio Commission.
It was started under the guise of not having one radio station.
Right.
Because the history
interference
of the FCC was interference, right? I would have a station that had 10,000 watts, and somebody would buy one right down the dial, and they would put a bigger antenna, get 50,000, and I'd be off the air because I couldn't get on.
Right.
So that's what the FCC was designed to do, was to stop that during the advent of radio, which was before TV. That's the history. You're right there. But then it turned into a tool of the big companies.
Correct.
Right? It was a tool of the big companies that then they just canceled licenses out, and it became a political weapon.
But here's the point. Let me bring you back to 5G. If we take the lawyers out of the picture, if we look at spectrum, if we look at the technologies we have today, we're not limited to. We're not limited to the amount that what's there. Technology can make a much more efficient use of the spectrum. 80% of our spectrum is owned by the government, right? We would have a much freer world if, the government had less control of our public lands and of our airwaves and so on. So the technologies, they want to be free. They want to enable the communication. The FCC wants to control it. Now, I think the Republicans are doing a great job. They have a tremendous. They are bringing empowerment to low-income communities in America, allowing them. They've reduced. There were ridiculous regulations about in your station you had to have a binder with the radio rules, and
No, we still have that.
Yeah, but you don't have to anymore. You can keep it digitally. You don't have to have the binder. This is all stuff from the 1930s and 40s.
I think you still have to have the binder.
No, you don't have to have the binder.
You have to have a physical file.
You can have it digitally now.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'll send it to you.
You gotta send that to me because somebody asked me the other day where my public file was. I'm like, what?
Yeah, you don't have to have it in a physical thing. You can have it.
There's all kinds of crazy radio things.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
There has to be somebody physically at the station 8 hours a day. So if you knock on the door, they're there.
So the good thing about is, Ajit Pai, Mike O'Reilly, they know that these things are crippling for small entrepreneurs, for people who want to start their own stations, and it doesn't make sense to do that.
All right, Dr. Roslyn Layton, breaking news, and if you're listening to this, we no longer need a physical public file. Dr. Layton says you can put it on a thumb drive. Right? We do not need the physical file. I don't think so. They were just asking me, one of the radio stations the other day was asking me, do we have your public file for political ads? I'm like, I don't know. I have to ask him.
So what I'm trying to say here is, in this digital world that we live in, do we need these Soviet-era kind of regulations to... Are they making things better? Are they enabling you to who are we serving by having the binder on the desk? Okay, is it so the FCC can make a check mark and say, okay, you're kosher, everything's fine? It's nonsense. So, the evolution that we're looking at, it's artificial to be able to say, oh, newspaper, TV, radio. I mean, it's all being blown up, right? It's convergence. And we're trying to regulate it with a essentially 19th century institution.
All right, so
from interstate commerce.
Here's what we agree on.
Yeah.
Net neutrality, bad idea, right? We agree on that. Public files in a paper binder, bad idea. We agree on that. One media company being able to buy up all the media outlets in one area, one SMSA, I'm not in favor of that. So I'll go back to the Soviet era politics of that one. I think the more independent outlets, the better. And you have independent outlets when they can't buy it up and they're forced to sell it to independent people that they can have an independent voice no matter what it is. So 2 out of 3 were good. That's 66%. Can't beat that. If my basketball team shoots 66% field goal attempts, I'll win every game. You're good. Dr. Layton, thanks for being with us.